Sorry. We're just gonna start whenever, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
We have started.
Have we?
Welcome.
Oh, thank
Welcome.
you.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Coach's Corner podcast, presented to you by Team Rabadi. Today we have a very special episode for you. We are going to get to that momentarily. However, we definitely don't want to be, dated in what we talk about. However, we would be remiss if we didn't bring up the loss of maybe a more personal figure to my life, to Robbie's life growing up, in regards to the loss of Kobe Bryant, as well as his daughter Gianna, and the loss of the 9 others. Seven others.
Yeah.
Apologies. 9 in total. It is no disrespect to the 7 that were lost, but that is not exactly our story to tell. And I would say, gosh, and speaking from the heart, it's a hurtful one. That I woke up on Sunday morning, January 26, 2020, to hear of a loss of a childhood hero. And growing up in Texas, it's difficult to be a Lakers fan. It's difficult to have someone at the time, not now. You have to go back in a time capsule and see someone that was so polarizing, and yet be the staple and the crux of everyone in Texas's losing team. The villain, and you rooted for that. And it's been a tough week, seeing the loss of someone like that. And if I could just state my first memory, it was the 1998 NBA All-Star game. We had lived in Kentucky, and Robbie.
You had lived.
You came up, and Robbie had been watching it and told me to come over to his side, and he said, "Watch this guy. He's only 18 years old, and he's starting in this game." I never stopped watching since then. Always a fan. I take it super personally because a lot of my elation, a lot of my hero worship came from watching Kobe. And growing up, playing basketball, if I thought I could be just 1% of that, and how we just would imitate wanting to be that way with the post fadeaway, the crossover, the drive. But it was unmatched. And I'll say he exemplified someone who didn't sit around counting the beats in his heart, but made sure every beat in his heart counted. So it's a personal loss to see, even though I don't know him, but clearly to everyone in this room and everyone watching, it touched in some way. Yeah, so may he rest in peace, may his daughter rest in peace, and may the 7 others rest in peace, and my heart goes out to those families. Anything you wanted to touch on?
No, I think you said it perfectly. Really, I don't even know how I'd follow that with anything. But yeah, the same feelings, and yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just so profound. Anytime there's loss like that, and the only thing that you can do is move forward and look ahead. And one thing personally for Nabil and I is actually back in August we bought tickets to a Lakers game, and it happens to be on February 10th. So we get to pay our respects, our honor pretty soon in person. Go out there and yeah, just moved, and you hear all the stories, and man, just not to get too emotional or upset, but you hear the stories of like the letters that are left, full letters, not just an RIP kind of thing. It's just moving and heart-wrenching, and losses, there is no ever dealing with it. There's only embracing it, accepting,
Yep.
and then the process of moving on and living in their honor and stuff like that. And even with a celebrity that you never met, you never knew, and and
Never once in my life did I think my life would be affected by that.
yeah.
I didn't think I'd be that guy
Yeah,
in
yeah.
any way. And
Yeah, true.
and I think just the one small thing I want to say is whether you're a martial artist, practitioner of sport, business, whatever, you can absolutely admire the tenacity that he brought to everything he ever did. It was nonstop and it was 24/7 for him.
The way he prepared,
It was
unreal.
incredible.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
Kevin, before I move on, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I mean, I stopped being a basketball fan for not necessarily, just lost interest and put it elsewhere. Because once I go into something, I'm all in. And I was a super fan during the 2 runs of the three-peats of the Chicago
runs.
Bulls. Yes, and I mean, super fan. Gave me another reason to go to McDonald's that much more, to collect all the Dream Team cards and all of that.
I wish I had those cards.
But what I'm getting from it all is people like you that I look up to, all you guys, and the whole other world, the social media, how much of effect he had on other people's lives. And I think I just take that from everyone, and I'm going to segue this into a Jocko like live podcast thing I went to, and how he ended it was go out and live and use that as the inspiration, you know. And that can go with anybody, right? You're going to have family members that pass, friends of family members, et cetera, et cetera. I think with everyone passing, it should be a little drop of inspiration for you to live. Live your life to the fullest, and whatever that means to you, your fullest, right? Not the craziness, but just live your life to the fullest, how it fits you. That's how I would add.
Another just quick touch on, Kevin said it, it's just been a week of adversity. Gosh,
Yeah.
I can't talk right now. In hearing about Professor Rafael Lovato and what he's going through. I don't want to touch on it too much. It's one of those things that I think all of you should take the time and listen to the story that he had told at Joe Rogan's podcast.
Sure.
I mean, I say a story like it's some work of fiction. No, I mean it's kind of what he had went through going to the Mousasi fight and afterwards and where he is now. I would say it's inspirational and heart-wrenching at the same time. And it's nothing. It's something where it's just my heart goes out, and I think from any of us, if he ever needed anything, we're all there.
Sure.
I know the relationship that Coach Robbie has with him is much closer than mine, or maybe Kevin's. Is there something that you want to touch on, Coach Robbie?
No, I mean, again, you kind of summed it up beautifully. That to urge everyone to go out, listen to the podcast, hear the full story. I got to hear that in person, and so just the greater depth of everything. And so I told him that, this story is something you need to be shared and put out there, and I was going to actually continue to share his story to let people watch the fight, see the ups and downs, and let people not forget that these are human beings behind the gloves, behind it all, behind even the muscles and tattoos and presence of who they are, that they're human beings with issues. And there has never been a single training camp in my life, single training camp I'm sure in Coach's life, of anyone's, that has not had a massive issue. I'm not even talking about the small ones that happen on a regular basis like normal human beings have on a day-to-day basis, but I mean something giant. And that the world does not go away when you dedicate 2 months for a fight or something like that. And in Rafael's case, 6 plus months, because the fight got postponed, and just all that kind of, drama and hell. I don't want to say drama like there's something, but like
it's an emotional roller coaster.
Roller coaster, a massive health issue. For those of you who don't know, I again urge you to go watch, listen for yourself. And
those health issues are not the normal training camp health issues, which, by the way, are not normal issues to have on a day-to-day basis. Like you pointed out.
Right.
Those are the 8 weeks of, oh my gosh, I
Right.
hurt something popped, whatever. I still got to go. I still have to go through with this.
Which, funny enough, he had that as well as the big.
Yep.
So there's two, and so it's pretty funny. Not pretty funny, but just crazy how.
Yeah.
I got the big ones and the little ones. Check and check.
Yes.
They're all there. So yeah, but want to send him a bunch of love and respect and great energy to know that we all support him and that he's got a lot of awesome stuff to do in this life.
Yeah.
Like there's no there's no feeling bad for too long. All your next step is ahead. So
Yes, sir. Yeah, I applaud his courage to share the story as well, and the reasoning behind it. It's like, hey, man, let's get out ahead of this. I had to find out the hard way. Hopefully, I can prevent other people from finding it out the same way and go kind of take the initiative and get ahead of the curve, if you will. Yeah.
I mean, that hour and 45 minutes kind of flew by listening to JRE, Joe Rogan's podcast. So, again, encourage.
Hey, we're not here to hype another podcast. We're here to hype our own podcast.
Joe Rogan, if you hear me right now, please.
Call me up. I'm ready. I'll try DMT with you. Whatever.
On.
You need.
All right, guys. Thank you for bearing with us with that introduction, to that intro. Today's podcast subject is, I think, everyone's favorite subject, especially to observe, never want to live through. Minutes go by at a snail's pace when it's happening to you. We're discussing failure and just kind of overcoming it, what we've learned from it, how it has built us to who we are. So we want to thank you for being on this podcast. So first question, is everyone ready?
Now I am.
Okay, why'd you wear those dried out shoes? Those are a failure. Coach Robbie got real serious on that one. See that?
I just laugh because no, it's not true. It's one of those. It couldn't possibly be true.
You're right.
So, it's one of those.
This would be a side podcast.
Our presence couldn't handle
allow
it. So, listen, failure is a fear that dwells on all of us. It is a driving factor, and yet it is with 100% presence of mind, almost unavoidable. So, in just wanting to jump into this podcast, I would like to ask, starting with Coach Robbie, how has failure or apparent failure set you up for later success? Two-parter. What is that favorite failure you've had?
So I think. So just to describe it a little better, let's just identify. We're talking about a failure that obviously led to something, a lesson learned, and to develop and to get better, to grow, and that's the big point of all of this, right? All of it is to grow and to get better, as opposed to just a regular failure. It's whatever, things happen, mistakes happen, things like that happen, and so there's one, and those are just sometimes the smaller ones, and then there's the bigger ones, and so I'm going to answer it in reverse. What is my favorite failure? And one that I learned the most from and developed the most from. And it's kind of a one to the other, leading to it. And my favorite failure, the one that's one of the most polarizing and just like scarring of my life, is I actually owned a business before the academy. And I owned a coffee shop. And, had that entrepreneurial spirit from a young age and really wanted to do that and kind of strove for that in my life, and wanted that kind of to try it, to learn, to figure it out. Well, so I purchased a coffee shop in an existing space that was there already, and I thought, hey, these are all little things that are going to help me be successful. And well, now I'm here, and just everything start happening. The wheels start moving. I make a handful of decisions behind behind a big desk, if you will, and then that's it. And it's actually, I couldn't have been further from the truth. It spiraled downwards so badly, so quickly for me, and I was so personally invested on so many levels, financial and otherwise, that it was a catastrophic failure, and it really made me understand I was so ill prepared, knew so very little about what I was getting into and thought, hey, I've got a little background in this and that's good enough. And, everyone's going to come to the coffee shop because I'm here now. What? No one cares. The world just moves on. You got to do work. You got to put this effort in. This doesn't matter. And so it was just, I was a little, younger then. I think it was like 28, 27 or 28 when that happened. So
I was around then. That's crazy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so definitely it was like 2008, 7, 8, something like that.
Yep.
It was between fight 1 and fight 2 for sure for me. But so it was this like huge failure, and it spiraled downward real quickly. And it was one of those that I was lucky to even unload it for like pennies on the dollar and only take a, meteor-like loss on everything, as opposed to just a completely global ending event for me personally kind of thing. So, and it was huge. And man, I mourned it for close to a month. Seriously, I sat on my couch. I did not move. Hardly, not to be gross, didn't shower or shave. It was really bad. I was really in a depressed state of mind, and it was one of the worst. And it was my awesome and beautiful wife, who girlfriend at the time.
Shout out to Caitlin.
Shout out to Caitlin. Big shout out to. I don't know.
You never thought you'd have a podcast where you shout out to your wife.
Exactly. and then try to make up a silly nickname for her that I don't have. I'm like, no. But Katie Cat.
Katie Cat, yeah, it's right there.
All right, folks, we need to take a quick
intermission
here. Me and Coach Kevin's current obsession is a TV show on Hulu called Letterkenny. Yeah. And we're absolutely ruining both Nabil and Brandon's life with it, with all the references. It's an amazing show. Go watch it. For all of you who've ever been near a small town or know small town people or not. And it's perfect. The show's Canadian, yet it could be anywhere, Texas, anywhere, Indiana.
Yeah, anywhere.
Anywhere. And it's amazing. So anyway. Back to my massive depression. That's a transition. That's a way to go. No,
kudos on that one.
But my amazing wife who believed in me, put everything she had back into me to want to pull myself out of that. And so it was huge. I felt, and this was like before social media entered my life. So it wasn't like it was a public embarrassment anyway, but I felt humiliated and embarrassed and all these different things to like such a level that was so personal, and it really caused me to grow and stop thinking like, well, just because that whole thing of like we're all special, absolutely, but it doesn't mean that you get to skip the line on anything.
Yeah, you're not owed anything.
Yes, you have to put in the same hard work as everyone in that exact field and pay those dues just like everyone else, or you have nothing to say. And so it helped really develop some mental toughness and stuff that really paid massive dividends, because like obviously the transition to here, to Team Rabadi, the academy, being able to run it, be able to miss years of mistakes just by simply understanding those types of errors and the things I did wrong and what I didn't take in accountability, and not pushing myself to grow, and reaching for resources to pull in, those types of things, that all changed. And it is a complete 180 shift. If you see me today, or even 9 years ago when the academy was first going, it was a 180 shift from what I was doing at the coffee shop, my first business, to the academy. And knowing that was huge. The other side of it was, like I said, there was a 2-part to it. That I learned the business aspect, the preparation, the personal, the physical side. But then I got to get a deeper feel of the grittiness that lives inside, and can I take on some of those challenges? And soon after I'd moved on from that, I had my second MMA fight, and not to ruin it, we're working on a little mini doc for it and all that good stuff down the road. Hopefully soon we'll have some updates on it. But something pretty tough happened in the fight. I was intentionally fouled in a really, really heinous way, and it took everything I could, including going back to that grit, to be able to overcome it, stay the course, and actually win the fight and grow from it and understand things on a new level. So definitely the catastrophic loss of that first business, I could never have been a success ever without that. Plain and simple. Not to mention the great appreciation for it at all times. It's huge.
In response to the fight, it literally made front page of a major martial arts news outlet. So can't wait to talk about that at a later time.
Yeah.
Something I humorously like to point out is if you ever have any questions in regards to coffee, you can go up to Robbie and he'll give you some amazing recommendations, and you will love it. You go up to Robbie 12 years ago and ask him about coffee, hates the stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Just
So
despised it.
So spoiler alert.
Yes.
I did not.
Yes.
Drink, I did not. I did not drink coffee when I owned a coffee shop.
I was holding out on that, by the way.
Yeah,
I'm sitting there. I'm like,
That's my love for the story.
Dear old coach didn't get into coffee till after he started having kids. No coincidence.
This guy recommended it.
And I think everyone on the planet recommended it all the time.
I think I have to give you some instructions on how to drink it to where it's not as foul the first time.
But you should have had him
put it
drink
to
straight
my
black
mouth?
coffee first,
Pinch my
so he
nose?
understands what to avoid.
Yes.
Yeah.
The
I
coffee
think
journey.
by the first few times it was pretty much a little coffee with your sugar kind of thing to get through it.
Yep.
I think the other thing I just got to point out, Coach, when I ask a question in a format, please don't reverse it. It's there for a reason. I appreciate your creativity, but not with my questions. But thank you.
I feel so trivialized.
Coach Kevin.
Yeah.
Same
Was
goes
that,
for you.
Was that both parts though?
It was.
Yeah, that was both parts.
Okay.
Basically the I kind of maybe three parts. Basically, the failure of the business to obviously the education of it, that learning lesson, into both the starting of this academy, but then what it did for me, basically spiritually to toughen up, Buttercup.
Yes, sir.
You need to suck things up, and things aren't going to always be easy. And one little added to it is that my first MMA fight, and I didn't have the privilege of like amateur and all this stuff. It just wasn't around. And in fact, I think it was on the second sanctioned MMA fight in Texas. Which
is insane.
Which is
for
insane.
Texas.
Because this is like, I'm not talking about 1986. This was 2006 or
2006.
Yeah, because I just started.
Right.
And I mean,
And so open-handed strikes, like pancrase rules, were the rule of the land at that point. And Texas hadn't ratified it for whatever reason. You could do, obviously grappling was fine, but you could do kickboxing matches, gloves, the whole thing, the Muay Thai style fights, no problem. Boxing, of course, big boxing state, and all that kind of stuff. But MMA, everybody had to strike open palm. And no closed fist. You could do closed fist to the body, I believe. You could head kick someone, which was bizarre. But you could not closed fist punch someone. It was crazy. So I was on the second one. Let me probably correct that. I think it was on the second one in Austin, and maybe like the third or fourth in the entire state. I don't remember. It was with the Renegades promotion.
Was the first one the Renegades or the second one?
The second one for sure was Renegades, and that was in Austin, but I think there was one in Houston just before, so it could have been their third or fourth show. And then obviously the blowing up of it. This was in the early days, pre, in martial arts you got to talk pretty much exclusively pre-tough, post-tough.
Yeah.
The Ultimate Fighter show and what it did to the scene, and for all of us that trained, just a quick sidebar is that when you would train, I remember once doing a search, Google search, or maybe Alta Vista at the time, whatever.
Wow.
No, it wasn't that far back. But I remember searching like subjects and things were coming up, and I tried grappling, right? Just like, and the first thing that popped up was old school ninja grappling hooks. Like the
Nice.
three. It was like I was like, and you could buy, and it was selling them, so you could buy one.
Yeah.
This like 12-pound piece of metal kind of thing. So I just always will remember that.
We always had those grappling hooks since then.
They were roped to spinning.
Shaped our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, what if an object doesn't quite fit the hooking?
It just doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work. All right. Sorry,
Wow.
Coach.
Clearly you've
I
never
went
seen
too
American
Confession,
Ninja 4.
yeah, clearly. So confession, I am a tough noob. And I just read something that was funny. That comes from like the underground, right? It was a web board, message board that I never jumped on, and
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a whole community there.
Oh, yes.
Our good friend, our mutual good friend, Jeremy Carbone, shout out.
Yes.
He was the first one to call me that. He was like, "You're a tough noob," because if you don't know what that is, it's just like Coach said, pre-tough and post-tough. And I started training after the show, so I'm a tough noob. And now they call us seasoned veterans because I'm 13 years in. And yeah. Anyway.
I love that.
Yeah.
Same question goes for you. Let me know if you need me to repeat it.
No, I think I got it, and I think it's a two-parter. And it's weird looking at this situation as a failure. It really is. But the way I see it is because for those that know me, I'm an all-in type of guy. I'm either all the way in or it doesn't even exist in my life. And as I said, I think on the last podcast, my first love and passion was BMX. I was kind of raised on two wheels. My whole family raced motocross and had four-wheelers. We were from the small town, if you will. And
Letterkenny, Indiana.
yeah, exactly. And
I don't know the reference.
yeah.
One day.
Good, actually. You stay away from that show. But, so I fell in love with it, and even that was kind of a demotion in the family tree because I was such a pansy on my motorcycle that I defaulted to my bicycle, right? Wow. And that's just every time you saw me past 16 years old, I was on my bicycle. That's the reason why I moved to Austin, Texas, right? My small town, the friends just fell apart and went the direction I wasn't. And I found a new group of friends from surrounding cities that still actually loved BMX. And they're like, hey, we're going to move to Austin, which turned out to be the Mecca. Probably still is tenfold now for that reason. And I kind of was starting looking around, and there was nothing there for me. So I went up to Mom and said, hey, I'm moving. You okay with that? She's like, yep. So I packed up my Chevy Beretta and the last $600 that I had and moved to Austin, Texas. Yeah. So then fast forward, and I'm picking up steam in the BMX world. I'm riding every single day, picking up a handful of sponsors, going on road trips, magazines, video parts, etc., and it was a blast. And then this is the second year I was supposed to go to Woodward West, which is a training camp, if you will, for BMX, skateboards, etc. And 2 days before, I blew up my foot. So if anyone's ever seen my foot, aka Sugarfoot, what happened is I crashed doing a trick that I've done hundreds of times. I put my foot down and I literally crushed it. So I didn't even, I broke my three middle ones, and I was out for kind of 6 months, right? Mm-hmm. So what that did was it put fear in what I love to do most. Mm-hmm. That combined with personal side stuff, moving into a house with my roommates because I had just broken up with my girlfriend, all of this stuff, and realizing that I gotta work, man. BMX is not gonna put money on the table. Not that I was necessarily wanting that to do it, but when you love something so much, it's all you know. So, if you put the right work in, it's almost inevitable that you will kind of get some kind of finances out of it, right? Yeah. But it's always a side perk, right? So you never do it for that reason. But so there was the transition. So that was like late 2005. My good friend Dennis Dombrow fought. He trained right before me. He was him and his roommates were living in my house for just a month, right? So they moved out of their house and they were in transition to get their other house. And he showed me my very first fight, which was Shogun versus Rampage in Pride, where he destroyed his ribs, folded him over the and I'm just like, that's amazing, right? And then, so here I am, still in a cast, watching these fights, and, I start to walk again, start to ride again, and then he calls me, I'm like, dude, I love this stuff. It's awesome. Do you do that? He's like, yeah, come do it, right? And that's, like I said, I think I told that story. That's how I started martial arts.
Yeah.
So the failure aspect is, my foot breaking and putting fear into what I love the most. And if that never happened, I wouldn't be here today. So I think it literally changed the trajectory of my whole entire life and feeling like I'm putting in the spot that I was supposed to be. And I'm not much of a religious person or anything like that. So that in itself is hard to kind of wrap my mind around.
Yeah.
Right? But I couldn't feel more like that. Like I feel like I'm in the right spot. And I got emotional last podcast to Coach and trying to make him proud and all of that. And so that failure of me, breaking my foot and realizing it's not going to put money on the table, and then finally falling in love with another thing, which was martial arts. And it was about a year, maybe 18 months where I did them both. And then it was, I have a bicycle? I didn't even know. Yeah. I only use it to ride my dogs around the block now. And part two, my second favorite failure. Let's fast forward into fighting, right? So that takes a few years, right?
20 minutes later.
Yeah, so that takes a few years, getting up the courage to fight. The first fight I came out on top. That was an amazing experience in itself. And I believe it's my second or third amateur fight. And I fight this guy. His nickname is Action Jackson, and it couldn't be more fitting. He was a 37-year-old man. I was 28. And this guy is my second fight at 145. And my friend's girlfriend, my friend Trey, who got me into fighting or inspired me to take my first fight, sent a picture over like a week out. Have you seen your opponent? And holy moly, he was shredded. About 2 to 5 inches. I don't know, 3 inches taller than me, but just yoked at 145. Kind of like, how Barboza looks at 55, not, I'm like. Yeah. And then we have our good friend Adam Genshert, right? Just, automatically just, what brushes it off. He's like, look at his legs. Yeah. He doesn't do legs. That's all you got to do is kick him, kick his legs, and help me get over my fear. And here I am just, this is like a David and Goliath moment to me, right? So now the first round, my first real ass whooping that I ever took. 3 minutes straight. Coach has to remember it. Oh, I got beat to pieces, right? And I remember it to this day. I use that moment to this day. But I got up, I mean, they could have probably called that fight, to be honest.
I don't think it was anywhere near that much.
Really? Yeah, Fair enough. But, no. I mean, I survived the 3 minutes of ass whooping. And then the second round, I start kind of matching it, right? Then the third round, I'm honestly kind of winning the round. All the way until the buzzer, this guy just, put a beating on me. And the thing that sticks out forever and ever and ever is when the buzzer rings, right? He's on the ground. I stand up, and I have to help him off the ground. And what that did for me is help me realize that I do have heart. And there's no quitting this guy. Yeah. And I'm getting emotional because it's every tough challenge I have in my life, I go back to that. Every fight after that, I compare this. Like, there's no way he's going to hit me as hard as this guy. There's no way this dude's going to put a beating on me like this guy. Yeah. And it hasn't happened. Even to my last pro fight where I have lost, that guy did not touch me near as much as that guy in my third amateur fight did. And to this day, I will thank him for that. And any challenge in life, I'll refer to that, and I think I will, build up the courage to face it and hopefully overcome it. And and I try to use that on a daily basis and deliver those messages the best way I can.
So, wonderful story, guys.
Thank you.
I feel like I have to jump to this next question and just hear the potential polarizing difference in this narrative. Is your perceived failure in any of your stories, was that a lack of skill that you had, or is it just an undermining lack of focus? What do you think that was? Why do you think in each one of your respective stories there was an ultimate result of failure, which, let's be honest, it's not a failure because you guys are where you are today because of that. All of us are. But in that moment, in that story, what do you think it was? Was it lack of skill, belief, understanding goals? How would you put it?
And D, all of the above, right?
Yeah.
And so I think so. You're 100% right when you said there's no way that's a failure from what you got from it. Absolutely. But you tell me at that time. And you tell me in that moment.
Yeah.
And, you know, like the business failing, all that kind of stuff, that's something I couldn't even talk about for 5 or 6 years. Even after learning that lesson, I tried to scrub it out of my mind for a while until I learned, started embracing that and maturing and understanding it. And then talking about my second fight, and even though I did something that, I could later recognize in it that it was courageous and dug deep and showed heart and all that stuff, I was almost inconsolable after my fight.
Yep.
And Nabil knows this. He was there. I was impossible to talk to because I was a rambling mess of insecurities and feeling terrible about who I was and what I did and what I didn't do, I should say. And never conceding that, you were put in an automatically really tough spot to do that. And then to answer your question, yeah, it's all those things. Now, what it does, and this is something that I really love, that Teddy Atlas kind of once said, and I'm going to summarize it so it's not a direct quote, but he just talked about, when people talk about fighting doesn't build character, it reveals it.
Yes.
And I used to struggle with what the heck does that even mean, really, and it makes you understand that even more. And he had the best way of saying it. He's like, what it's like is that, there's parts of us that are darkened naturally. Like the sun just doesn't come into that area, and so we're able to kind of hide stuff in that closet. Yep. Now fighting or any extreme moment of life turns this massive spotlight, like at a grand opening of a club,
right on it,
right on all of it. Every part of it is now illuminated, and it feels like that only happens on the biggest stage possible for you personally, sometimes professionally, sometimes actually the biggest stage. Like, we were talking about Connor and Cowboy and all that stuff. All that stuff gets put on the biggest stage possible, and then it reveals itself then. Did you really do all that you could to have the expectation of the success you wanted? Did you do that? And have you faced your demons enough to be honest with yourself to assess those things? Nah, I'm great, man. I'm doing good. All's going well. I'm perfect, and I'm working hard. I'm training hard. I got the best team, and never really kind of looking in the mirror. I'm like, well, I kind of did phone in a few of the practices, or I kind of did this, or I kind of didn't do that, or I kind of knew that. Like one thing that was real revelation is my strength and conditioning for my second fight was not on par, was not good enough. I could train in the gym all day, all the time, wouldn't fatigue, especially as a heavyweight. It was something I prided myself on, but fight preparation, oh my gosh,
a different game of conditioning.
Different. I mean, man, take you at whatever your 100% is, take 20% right off the top, just by being there before you've ever done a thing. Now talk about if you're not experienced, your inefficiency of energy, just you're dissipating energy at such a rapid rate. It's like your cell phone before you have to turn it in for a new one. It like the battery is dying at such a rate, and I can't have these apps on. And in this certain high stress situation, every app is on. Every location, everything is on there, and you are burning energy like you would not believe. And your mind has no go-to place to sit at that you can even have a moment of rest and focus. And so, all of the things you said are absolutely at test, but it's very personalized, and that's why it's like my story. I mean, literally, if you took the story arc of mine and Kevin's or almost anyone's, it'd be fairly similar. It's a redemption story. But very personalized to how that happened.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that's
I gotta ask you a quick
Show
question.
me a successful person that hasn't failed.
Oh, man.
They're non-existent.
Oh, man.
So
Yeah.
I gotta ask this question because it's something that always has been buried in my mind. When I had my first smoker, it didn't affect me the same way that the second one, but when you had said when you walk in that ring or that cage, immediately 20% is taken off the top,
20%.
and it's something to the feel
If
of the
you're lucky.
eyes. Exactly, something to the feel of the eyes of people watching you. What is that? What is that drain?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it all goes down to our base DNA
Right.
of being like, part of our survival. Obviously, once you get past the big air, water, food,
Yeah.
shelter aspect, very next up, like right behind it, is love and acceptance and part of a family, a community, especially one that you care for. Then now you're on the line for like, oh man, will I lose who I am in that? Will people now look at me differently? Will I be seen? And we all have that deep insecurity of like, I'm kind of a fraud up here. And if you talk to any successful person, they almost say that all the time, like, man, we talked about Kobe Bryant. Man, I just wanted to be accepted as an NBA player, and everyone look at me as that. It's like, dude, I think you accomplished that the moment you started playing. And for us, it's a given. But for him, it was probably not till he won his second evolution of titles.
Yeah.
Not the first three that, man, Shaq was a big part of it. And I was kind of the key second guy. But when I got to be the guy, I think that's what he felt. And when he talks, like, those were the titles that meant the most, is that when he had more on the line and he was put out there. So yeah, it's that thing of like, of course, acceptance and I guess right behind food, water, air, shelter, right?
Yeah.
is-
well,
is
fitting
love.
in
Fitting
too
in,
is
yeah.
survival, and you're out there
That's right.
all by yourself.
We're pack
so
animals.
All your fibers are like, wait a second, we got to go back with the people.
Yeah.
What are we doing out
Yeah.
here? We can get attacked by lions and
Right.
I guess-
wolves. And
I guess you're anticipating your story just as much as everyone else is actually watching you in that moment. And that the fact that you're there,
yeah,
you're the headline, and everyone's watching this movie, and you don't know how it's gonna go.
Yeah.
that probably is what's
Huge.
taken.
how
So
crazy
Kevin,
is it that something could be so real yet so made up, all in the same thing?
Right.
stranger than fiction.
Right? It's so crazy because it's pressure that you're making up all by yourself.
Yes.
But it feels tangible.
Right.
Um,
It's like, yeah, give me some pressure.
Give me some pressure.
Yeah.
Put it in my hand.
And
Exactly.
Sorry to deter on this, but to go to you in regards to my question,
Yeah.
did failure reveal a lack of skill that you thought you had, or was it just your mindset, your goal, your preparation for the moment?
Yeah.
Not anticipating it. What do you think it was?
Yeah, I think the first one was a forced perspective shift.
Okay.
And I don't know how to say the skills kind of, the lack of skills,
Sure.
Played a part. I just made it a thing. But I think what it was is I think it helped me realize what happens when you put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Right? Without even knowing, because it's all I knew and it's all I ever wanted to do. When that gets taken away from you, again, you're forced to change your perspective. Well, how can I continue to move forward? What's going to pull me out of this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The second one, yes, the lack of skill was there, and I think that's simply because the lack of mentors were there, especially home base, and you have people coming out of their own comfort zone to offer a helping hand because they've walked that path already, and understanding that, hey, this mentor specifically is not going to be there for you, so I'm going to not open just like my resources, but I'm going to open my gym and my time to help you out, right? I mean, my first handful, all my amateur fights, I was training at not one but 3 different gyms, sometimes 4. Traveling down south, I even went to King Webb's gym in Luling, a couple times just to have other, different sparring partners and stuff like
See
that.
what else that you could. Yeah.
Shout
But
out to King Webb.
so it's like the lack of knowledge of the resources was the reason why I had the lack of skills to beat this guy,
Yeah.
right? But what it revealed was heart and grit and character, if you will, and that loss propelled me into a successful professional career in MMA, even though it was short. 3-1 seems to be successful in my eyes. And on a personal note, it helped me, like, you always have to find a reason why you're fighting, and just like I say, like, the reason you start isn't the reason you continue, and that's the same thing with each and every fight, right? When you accomplish that goal of championships, you're like, well, now what, right? Hence the predictable pattern of people losing it and falling on their face, Connor, and then the redemption story, and it's like, how many times can you redeem yourself?
Yeah.
How many times has that story been told?
Oh, I mean,
Through
it's like the
history of human.
Time. And it never gets old because we all have to go through that same path.
Yeah.
When Kevin was talking, I was reminded of a great Muhammad Ali quote that is like kind of, I think, encapsulates a little of this, is that, and again, the worst requoter ever, so bear with me if I get a few of it wrong, but he said that it's not the mountain that stops people, it's the pebble in their shoe. They never get past that irritation, that mild amount of toughness, and that hard thing, and just it's constantly there and nagging, and how you overcome it. And so the mountain itself becomes kind of the easier part. And I think even you start breaking it down, and you notice, like, the big stuff kind of took care of itself, but it's all the little things around it that we're all missing. And you realize the little stuff is the big stuff, and the big stuff is the little stuff, and all that kind of stuff. And so,
So we're winding down, gentlemen. But this last question is going to be a two-parter, right? The second part is going to be something you guys have been constantly saying this entire time, but I just wanted to be formulated to words because it's just to say it. So first part to it is, I know myself. I try to mentally avoid my failures, right? I just, we were talking about it the other day. I am like my father, who I love, but I will dwell on it. And even in training, when Coach Robbie and I are hitting pads, he'll literally have to not yell at me because something is going wrong with my technique or I look terrible. It's simply because I might have slipped on a 5-part combo that I just can't get over mentally. And I have to constantly be told, get out of your head. It's fine. And so my question is, how do you just not dwell on those failures? And then the second part is, how important is that failure to your life? What does that mean for you?
Yeah. Personally, it's acceptance.
Yeah.
Just accept it and move on. And you have to come up with your own, what's the word I'm looking for? Strategy. I think that's the wrong one, but your own way to figure out how to, get to that accepting point the fastest, right? The quicker, efficient way to accepting it. I mean, I don't think I have much problems with those kinds of things. Mine is more in, like, explosive things. Like, why do I yell when I drop my keys? You know what I mean? And that's so small, right? But take that to anything else, but it's just learning to accept it.
Yeah.
And then, what can you take to grow from it? What did you learn? And then move on. It's just putting the next foot in front of the other, personally.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Did I answer that okay?
Of course.
Okay.
I think this is the last we're going to see of Coach Kevin.
That was amazing.
That was awesome.
I'll take my puppers and get out of here.
Again, another letter Kenny.
Yeah.
Put your shoes on and leave.
The thing I'll add to Coach's comment to what you said is, one, failure is 100% required. It has to happen. If it is not happening, you're not pushing yourself. You're not growing out of your comfort zone. You're really spinning your wheels in place 100%. If there are no mistakes, if you are just in the perfection of one little aspect, that should have more mistakes than almost any other because of how focused, how laser sharp it is. I say this to my students a lot that, man, it's I don't want to say it's easy, but to get from 0 to like 70%, it actually kind of happens pretty smoothly. There are bumps and bruises, and it's rough and it's tough, but you kind of get with it. But then it's like everything after that starts moving at 0.5%.
Yeah.
And it's very small.
80-20, right?
Oh my
Isn't
gosh.
that kind of what it?
Exactly.
Right? It takes 20% effort to get 80% where you need to be, and then it takes 80% effort to get the 20% that you're dying
Perfect.
to do. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfectly said. And so it's that, and so you have to, like Kevin said, embrace it, accept it. But I would also say you lean into it as hard as you can. If you have a mistake that is something, you take full ownership of it. And you really go into it. And there are fighters that we've watched who their big thing is they don't check leg kicks, or they are terrible at the ground, or fighters that don't check leg kicks and are terrible at the ground, and they never address it because they have one skill set that's really outstanding above and beyond most everyone else, and they never address it. And we're all always scratching our heads. It's so obvious, but there's no acceptance, there's no ownership, and there's no going into it. You gotta take it. And I get it. For some that they're, it's a different situation and no judgment and all that kind of stuff, but at some point you gotta go to it. And you have to like really, really, really embrace it and those mistakes, and that they're not only natural, they're required to get better.
Yes, sir.
I totally forgot the second part of your question though.
You answered it. How important is failure?
What was the first part then?
The first part was, how do I not dwell on it?
There you go.
This is one. This is one. I know we're running on time and stuff, but they're really the same answer.
Yep. I mean, you legit answered it.
No. Let me answer this. Let me take a
Keep rolling
lap.
the footage, boys. Let's
Let me take a lap.
You're picking up the stomach growling right now.
To quote Adam Carolla, my quads of stupidity haven't quite started burning yet. I got a few more laps of moronic comments to repeat. Acceptance. No, it is the same. It is the exact same thing. You have to accept it to move on, and that's the only way life happens, growth happens, and it's what we're all here to do. We're here to grow and evolve and change, and not hold on to what we were or what things were and what that we want them to be. It's just what they are and what there will be, and that you're there for that moment, and that's it.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Coaches, I want to thank you. Our wonderful production team, our 53-man crew behind the camera. I want to
Crew
thank
of thousands behind us.
millions is put behind the camera, clearly not in front. And I want to thank everybody for watching. First, before we end the show, I do want to thank our sponsor in Restore Cryotherapy, Body Tracks, and Roll Bliss. And before we end this, of course, listen, I actually just want to say, I want to hear your thoughts on this this podcast. I want to hear your thoughts on maybe what the next podcast should be. If you have any questions, we're all going to answer it. We're pretty active on social media, including our production crew. And so if you guys have questions, thoughts, comments, leave them. Let us know. And more importantly, thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Tell the homies. All of them. Thank you guys for watching.